The line that never clears. Night shift at the County Emergency Communications Center had a rhythm you either learned to live with or it drove you insane. The hum of the servers never stopped. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead. Screens glowed in shades of blue and gray, each one waiting for something terrible to happen somewhere else. I'd been working dispatch for just under a year when I volunteered for overnight rotation. Not because I liked it, but because nobody else did. Between midnight and dawn, the building felt hollow. The city still existed outside, but in here it was reduced to numbers, addresses, and voices breaking through static. The kind of hours where your mind wandered if you let it. That's when mistakes happened. That's when rules mattered. The first rule I learned wasn't written anywhere. Never touch the auxiliary line. Nobody explained what that meant. It didn't need explaining. There was a phone mounted on the far wall of the operations floor, older than the rest, beige plastic yellowed with age. No screen. No keypad display. Just a receiver and a small metal plate bolted beneath it. Incoming only. It never rang during training. Never lit up. Never appeared on any call logs. Most of the staff treated it like a relic, something left behind when systems were upgraded but never removed. I asked about it once. My trainer didn't answer right away. She just stared at the screen in front of her like she was deciding whether acknowledging my question was worth the trouble. Overflow, she said finally. Overflow for what? For when the board fills, she replied, and that was the end of the conversation. The board never filled. At least, not officially. On my first overnight shift alone, I noticed something strange. Between calls, my headset would click softly, like it was adjusting its own volume. I checked the cables. Everything was fine. I chalked it up to old equipment. Then the auxiliary phone rang. Just once. Sharp. Loud. Completely wrong. Every other sound in the room seemed to pause around it. My heart jumped into my throat as I looked up. None of the other operators reacted. They kept typing. Kept talking. Kept responding to calls like nothing had happened. The phone stopped ringing. I waited. No one said anything. I stood up from my station and walked toward it, every step heavier than the last. The phone looked the same as it always had. Silent. Dead. Did you hear that? I asked the operator nearest me. She didn't even look up. Hear what? I stared at her, searching her face for some hint of a joke. You didn't hear the phone? She finally glanced over, annoyed. The auxiliary line doesn't ring. I didn't argue. I sat back down and finished my shift without incident. By the time the sun came up, I'd convinced myself it was stress, or fatigue, or my imagination playing tricks on me. I almost believed that. The second night, it rang again. This time, twice. I looked around the room. Still nothing. No reactions. No glances. It was like the sound only existed for me. I stood frozen at my desk, pulse pounding, waiting for it to ring a third time. It didn't. When my shift ended, I checked the system logs. Every call was accounted for. Every response timestamped. Nothing unusual. Except one line. A call, Idaho, with no number attached. Duration, midnight. Status. Pending. It vanished when I refreshed the screen. The third night, the ringing didn't stop. It went on and on, echoing through the empty spaces between desks. Loud enough that it made my teeth hurt. I stood up again, hands shaking, and this time my supervisor noticed. What are you doing? He asked. The phone, I said. It's ringing. He frowned. Sit down. It won't stop. He followed my gaze to the wall. His expression changed, not to confusion, but to something tighter. Controlled. He walked over, lifted the receiver, and placed it back down. The ringing stopped instantly. You don't answer that line, he said quietly. I didn't, I replied. You did. That doesn't matter, he said. If it rings, you ignore it. What is it? He held my gaze for a long moment. Then he said, sometimes calls come in that don't fit anywhere else. And we're not equipped to deal with them. That night, I dreamed of phones ringing in empty rooms. On the fourth night, the call came through my headset instead. Not routed. Not queued. Just there. Hello, I said before I could stop myself. The line crackled. Then a woman spoke. I was told you'd answer, she said. Her voice was calm, but there was something wrong with it, like it was coming from too far away, stretched thin by distance that wasn't physical. Ma'am, you've reached emergency services, I said automatically. What's your location? She hesitated. I don't know, she said. I think I used to. I glanced at my screen. No call Idaho. No location data. No timer running. This line isn't on the board, I whispered. I know, she replied. That's why I called it. My stomach dropped. How did you get this number? They transferred me, she said. They always do, eventually. Who does? There was a long pause. Long enough that I thought the line had dropped. Then she said, the ones who don't want to stay. A warning flashed on my screen. Unassigned call detected. Before I could respond, another voice cut in, mechanical, neutral, unmistakably automated. Overflow detected, it said. Stand by for reassignment. My screen filled with empty fields, populating one by one. Operator ID, pending. Call status, active. Duration, 001. The woman spoke again, urgency creeping into her voice. Whatever you do, she said, don't let them mark you available. Mark me how? By answering twice. The timer ticked to 002. Behind me, the auxiliary phone began to ring again, louder than ever. And for the first time since I'd started working nights, I realized something was wrong, not with the calls, not with the system, but with the assumption that dispatch was there to help everyone who reached it. Some lines weren't for emergencies. They were for replacement. Marked available. After the call ended, nothing went back to normal. That was the worst part. The screens didn't glitch. The phones didn't explode into chaos. No alarms went off. If anything, the room felt calmer than it had all night, like the system had settled into a decision it was comfortable with. I sat frozen at my station, headset still pressed to my ear, waiting for someone, anyone, to acknowledge what had just happened. No one did. Across the floor, operators continued their routine. Calls came in. Calls went out. Units were dispatched. Everything functioned exactly as it should have, except for the part of me that couldn't stop replaying the woman's voice. They transferred me. The automated message lingered in my head too. Overflow detected. Stand by for reassignment. I pulled up my operator dashboard and scanned through the tabs. All green. All active. My status read on duty, same as always, except for one new field that hadn't been there before. Availability. Pending. I stared at it, convinced I was misreading the text. Pending for what? I clicked it. The field didn't open. It didn't error out. It simply disappeared, like it had never existed in the first place. I leaned back in my chair, forcing myself to breathe slowly. Dispatch training drilled one thing into you above all else. Don't panic. Panic led to mistakes, and mistakes cost lives. But no part of this felt like an emergency I could handle. At 3:07 a.m., the auxiliary phone rang again. This time, my supervisor reacted. He didn't jump or flinch, but he looked up sharply, eyes locking on the wall like he'd been waiting for it. Don't, he said quietly. I hadn't moved. The phone rang twice more, each ring echoing through my skull. Still, nobody else reacted. No one even glanced in its direction. My supervisor stood up slowly and crossed the room. He didn't answer the phone. He didn't touch it. He unplugged it from the wall. The ringing stopped mid-tone. The sudden silence felt wrong, like something had been cut off in the middle of a sentence. That shouldn't have happened, he muttered. What shouldn't have? I asked. He looked at me, then really looked at me, and whatever he saw on my face made his jaw tighten. Did you answer a call tonight that didn't route through the board? He asked. I hesitated. That was answer enough. He motioned for me to follow him and led me into a small side office. He closed the door behind us and dropped his voice. Listen carefully, he said. There are calls that don't originate from outside the city. What does that mean? It means they don't have locations, he replied. They don't have numbers. And they don't have endpoints. I felt a chill creep up my arms. Then where do they come from? He exhaled slowly. From gaps. Gaps in what? Coverage. Staffing. Time. He rubbed his temples. Anywhere the system expects someone to be, and they're not. I thought of the woman's voice. I think I used to. Why aren't we trained for this? I asked. Because if we acknowledged it officially, he said, we have to explain where the previous operators went. I stared at him. You're saying dispatchers go missing? No, he corrected. I'm saying they stop being visible. A silence settled between us. How many? I asked. He didn't answer. When we returned to the floor, my station was already active. A call was queued on my screen. Not blinking. Not ringing. Waiting. I didn't touch it. The system answered for me. 911. What's your emergency? My voice said. I clamped a hand over my mouth. The caller spoke immediately. Thank God, a man said. I've been on hold forever. I watched my screen populate with his information, address, coordinates, call duration ticking upward. Everything looked normal. Too normal. I need help, the man continued. I think I'm stuck. Stuck where? My voice asked. I don't know, he replied. I was driving, and then the road just kept going. I glanced at the map overlay. The location pin flickered, then stabilized somewhere outside the city limits, far outside. A place that shouldn't have had service. Behind the call window, another field appeared briefly before vanishing. Source. Overflow. My hands shook as I reached for the manual override, trying to reroute the call to another operator. The button was grayed out. A system notification appeared. Transfer disabled. Operator required. Sir. My voice said calmly. Are you injured? No, he answered. But I passed the same exit sign 3 times. My stomach dropped. How long have you been driving? My voice asked. The man hesitated. Longer than makes sense. I heard the woman's warning again in my head. Don't let them mark you available. What happens if I hang up? Asked my supervisor quietly, not breaking eye contact with the screen. He shook his head. That finalizes the assignment. And if I stay on the line? You stay visible, he said. For now. The call timer hit 1 o'clock. The man's breathing grew faster. You're still there, right? Yes, my voice replied. I wasn't sure who I was answering anymore. The auxiliary phone, still unplugged, rang once. Dry. Hollow. Impossible. My supervisor cursed under his breath. The lights above us flickered. On my screen, the availability field returned. This time, it wasn't pending. It read, available, confirmed. The system chimed softly. Overflow stabilized, it announced. The man on the line let out a shaky laugh. Thank you, he said. They told me if I stayed calm, you'd help me through it. I whispered. The line crackled. Dispatch, the man said slowly. Why do I hear typing when you're not asking questions? I looked around. No one was typing. Not even me. But beneath the hum of the servers, beneath the quiet of the night shift, I heard it. Keys clicking. Steady. Methodical. Like someone entering data that had already been decided. And somewhere deep in the system, another call began to queue. Understood. Coverage gap. Once the system marked me available, confirmed, I stopped feeling like a person sitting at a desk and started feeling like a component that had snapped into place. The call didn't end. The man on the line kept talking, his voice steady but strained, describing landmarks that didn't match any map, exits that repeated themselves, a road that refused to change no matter how far he drove. My screen updated constantly, recalculating his location, correcting itself, then correcting again, as if it couldn't decide where he existed. I wasn't asking questions anymore. The system was. Every few seconds, a prompt flashed briefly on my screen. Ask about weather, confirm vehicle status, keep caller engaged. I didn't select them. They selected themselves, and my voice followed along, smooth and reassuring, like I'd been doing this for years. I tried to fight it. I reached for the keyboard to manually override the call. The keys didn't respond. They clicked anyway. The typing sound I'd heard earlier grew louder, no longer subtle, no longer distant. It was coming from somewhere beneath the desk, inside the walls, inside the floor itself. Like a second operations center existed just under the surface, invisible but fully staffed. My supervisor stood behind me, pale and rigid, watching the screen. "This is how it works," he said quietly. "It finds someone who stays." "Stays on the line?" I asked. "Stays available," he corrected. The man's breathing spiked. "Dispatch," the sign just changed. "What does it say?" my voice asked. The caller hesitated. "It says, end of service area." My screen flashed red. Coverage gap detected. A new panel slid open on the side of my display, one I'd never seen before. Gap duration midnight. Operator status. Engaged. Escalation. Standby. "What happens when that timer runs out?" I asked. My supervisor didn't answer. Instead, he leaned closer and lowered his voice. "Do you know why we don't acknowledge room C anymore?" I shook my head. "Because once you name something like this," he said, "you make it permanent." The timer ticked to 0:10. The caller's voice trembled. "I can see lights up ahead." "Good," my voice said. "That means you're almost through." "Through what?" The typing stopped suddenly. Every monitor on the floor flickered at once. For the first time since the call began, I felt control loosen its grip on my hands. I slammed the mute button. The caller went silent. My voice stopped. The room exhaled. Alarms didn't sound. No one shouted. The system didn't object. It waited. I turned in my chair and looked at my supervisor. "You said if I hang up, it finalizes the assignment." He nodded. "But muting doesn't count." I continued. "No," he said. "It doesn't." "Why?" "Because muting implies you're still listening." I swallowed. On my screen, a message appeared in plain text, centered and unmistakable. "Listening confirmed." My chest tightened. The auxiliary phone rang again, despite being unplugged. This time, everyone heard it. Operators looked up from their stations, confusion spreading across their faces. Someone cursed under their breath. Another operator stood, scanning the room. "What the hell is that?" someone asked. My supervisor swore softly. "That's not supposed to happen." The phone rang a second time. Then a third. The system chimed. "Overflow demand increasing," it announced. "Additional coverage required." New calls began queuing, not on my screen, but on the empty stations around me. Headsets lifted themselves from desks, cords swaying gently as if caught in a breeze that didn't exist. Operators stared in disbelief. "I didn't accept anything," one of them said. Another tried to log out of their station. The option was gone. A woman near the back of the room pressed her headset tight against her ear. "There's someone on the line," she whispered. "They're not showing up in the system." Panic rippled through the floor. My supervisor grabbed my shoulder. "This is your fault," he said, not angry, not accusing. "Just stating fact. You made it visible." "I tried to end it," I said. "I tried to hang up." "No," he replied. "You tried to stop listening." The muted caller came back on the line without warning. "Dispatch?" the man asked, his voice distorted now, stretched thin. Why did everything go dark? I unmuted instinctively. "I'm here," my voice said. The system chimed approvingly. "Coverage restored," it announced. Some of the panic drained from the room. A few operators relaxed when their screens returned to normal. The headsets settled back onto desks. But not all of them. 2 stations remained active. Mine. And the one directly beside it. I turned slowly. The neighboring station had been empty all night. Now a name populated the operator field. Not mine. Not anyone I recognized. The status read, "Available. Transferred." The auxiliary phone finally stopped ringing. My supervisor stepped back, running a hand through his hair. "That's new," he muttered. "What is?" I asked. "It usually only takes one." The caller on my line let out a shaky breath. "I think I see a building," he said. "It looks familiar." My map overlay snapped into focus, the location pin finally locking into a recognizable place. A dispatch center. Our dispatch center. The address matched ours exactly. My heart slammed against my ribs. "You're not supposed to be here," I whispered. The man laughed weakly. That's what they said. Who? The people who answered before you, he replied. They said there was a gap, that someone had to stay on the line until it closed. The second station's screen lit up fully. A call timer began. 001, 002, 003. My supervisor stared at it in horror. They're routing internally now. What does that mean? I asked. It means the calls aren't coming from outside anymore, he said. They're coming from us. The man on my line spoke one last time. I think I'm parked, he said slowly. I can see myself through the window. The line went dead. My screen cleared. The availability field updated again. Available, primary. The second station chimed softly. A voice spoke from its speakers, familiar, calm, and unmistakably mine. 911, it said. What's your emergency? I didn't answer. I couldn't, because the voice on the line sounded terrified, and it was saying my name.